Donald Trump has issued a stark, high-stakes warning to Venezuela's newly appointed interim leader, Delcy Rodríguez. Do what's right or pay a very big price. This message, delivered in a telephone interview with The Atlantic, comes amid one of the most dramatic and controversial episodes of U.S. foreign policy in decades, as American forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and transported him to the United States to face drug and narco-terrorism charges. Reuters. The threat is unambiguous. Trump said that if Rodríguez does not align with Washington's expectations, she may face consequences probably bigger than Maduro. This represents a clear escalation in rhetoric and reflects an extraordinary willingness by the U.S. president to leverage military and diplomatic pressure to shape political outcomes in Caracas. Reuters. At the center of this crisis is Venezuela, a country that, despite enduring decades of economic collapse and political turmoil, holds the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Its position has made it a focal point not just of regional politics, but of global energy geopolitics. The U.S. intervention and subsequent warning to Rodríguez have polarized opinion around the world, sparked intense debate in Latin America, and renewed long-standing concerns about American interventionism in the Western Hemisphere. Forbes. In early January 2026, U.S. forces carried out a dramatic military operation in Venezuela, codenamed Operation Absolute Resolve, striking key military targets in Caracas and capturing President Nicolás Maduro along with his wife, Celia Flores. Maduro was then flown to the United States to face a federal indictment in New York on charges of narcotics trafficking and other alleged crimes. The Australian. The Biden-era government never recognized the outcome of Venezuela's 2024 presidential election as legitimate, and Trump's administration justified the operation as a law enforcement effort to hold Maduro accountable for narco-terrorism. Venezuelan and international critics described the raid as a blatant violation of sovereignty and international law, comparing it in scale and audacity to the 1989 U.S. invasion of Panama. The Guardian. Following Maduro's capture, Venezuela's Supreme Court and military appointed Vice President Delcy Rodríguez as interim president, a choice that was immediately denounced by Washington and other governments. Rodríguez, long an ally of Maduro and a key figure in the Bolivarian government, reacted angrily, calling the U.S. assault a barbarity and declaring Maduro the only legitimate president of Venezuela. Reddit. Her response threatened to upend Trump's initial belief that Rodríguez could be a cooperative partner in stabilizing the country. In fact, Trump had briefly praised her on Saturday as someone who could help make Venezuela great again, only to pivot sharply in his later comments when she voiced defiance toward U.S. objectives. Reuters. Trump's message to Rodríguez was not merely a domestic political remark. It reflects a strategic posture that goes beyond Venezuela's borders. His threat implies an expectation of cooperation, whether ideological, economic, or geopolitical, with Washington's agenda. But Rodríguez's rejection complicates that plan and raises fundamental questions about U.S. intentions in the region. Trump explicitly framed his actions as part of a broader justification for regime change and reconstruction in Venezuela, stating that rebuilding there and regime change, anything you want to call it, is better than what you have right now. A stark acknowledgement of interventionist goals. Forbes. For analysts and critics, this episode raises multiple concerns. Legality. The U.S. has not provided a clear legal basis under international law for seizing a sitting head of state on foreign soil without UN Security Council authorization. Precedent. Such a bold move sets a precedent for future unilateral interventions, particularly in nations with valuable resources or strategic positions. Regional stability. Latin American governments, many of whom have historically opposed U.S. interventionism, have warned that the operation undermines sovereignty and security across the region. Great powers competition. Russia, China, and other global powers are watching closely, and such actions could intensify geopolitical rivalries. The Guardian. Despite Trump's early suggestion that Rodríguez was receptive to U.S. involvement, her public statements immediately following the seizure of Maduro painted a different picture. She rejected Washington's narrative and affirmed loyalty to the Bolivarian government's legacy, insisting that Venezuela would defend itself and its natural resources. Such a stance, rooted in nationalism and resistance to foreign interference, complicates Washington's plans. Le Monde.fr. Rodriguez's response echoes broader regional sentiments. Many Latin American nations have been critical of the U.S. strike in Caracas, viewing it as a violation of the principle of non-intervention that underpins the Organization of American States and other regional frameworks. Countries such as Mexico, Argentina, and various Caribbean states have condemned the military action and demanded respect for sovereignty. The Guardian. Furthermore, Rodriguez's legitimacy is layered. While not recognized by the U.S., she was appointed by Venezuela's Supreme Court and supported by a significant faction within the military, creating a dual narrative of authority within her country. This ambiguity intensifies the geopolitical stakes and underscores the limits of Washington's ability to unilaterally shape outcomes. Central to the crisis is Venezuela's oil, the largest state-controlled reserve in the world. Trump and his administration have repeatedly tied their interest in Venezuela to energy independence and strategic leverage over oil supplies. In the immediate aftermath of Maduro's capture, Trump said the U.S. would run the country temporarily, including its oil industry, with the help of American energy companies. Forbes. This aspect of policy has deeply complicated public perception. Critics argue that energy interests, rather than genuine concern for democracy or drug trafficking, are the real drivers behind the intervention. The notion of controlling or directing Venezuela's oil output evokes historical resentment over U.S. involvement in the region and calls into question Washington's motives. OPEC nations, meanwhile, have responded to the uncertainty by pausing production increases and reaffirming their commitment to market stability. The disruption in Venezuelan oil production adds a volatile variable to global markets already sensitive to geopolitical tensions. Forbes. Within the United States, Trump's approach has sparked debate not only across party lines but within his own party. Senior Republicans, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, have grown cautious about Trump's initial suggestion that the U.S. would run Venezuela. Rubio and others have stressed that Washington does not intend to govern Venezuela directly, but will instead seek leverage to shape political outcomes. The Guardian. This backpedaling underscores the complexity of the situation. While Trump's rhetoric is bold, insistence on oil interests and regime change has raised concern among lawmakers who argue that the U.S. must clarify its strategic objectives and legal basis for intervention. Some Republican lawmakers have stopped short of endorsing Trump's grand statements, suggesting that Washington's actions should focus on countering drug trafficking and regional threats rather than direct governance. Across the aisle, Democrats and critics have condemned the operation as an illegal imperial adventure and questioned why congressional oversight was circumvented. Many argue that Congress should have been involved in any decision as consequential as a cross-border military strike and the capture of a foreign head of state. Internationally, the response has been overwhelmingly critical. Countries across Latin America and Europe have called for respect for sovereignty and due process. The United Nations Security Council is expected to meet to discuss the legality of the operation and its implications for international norms. Key concerns include whether the operation violates the UN Charter's prohibition on the use of force except in cases of self-defense or Security Council authorization. Many nations view the strike on Caracas as extrajudicial and precipitous, raising fears of a dangerous precedent that could justify future interventions in other states. For Venezuela itself, the situation remains deeply unsettled. Rodriguez now faces the near-impossible task of balancing internal legitimacy, public sentiment, and international pressure. Some observers predict that her defiance of U.S. demands will rally nationalist support and strengthen resistance to American influence. Others suggest that internal fractures within the Bolivarian movement may provide openings for negotiation or compromise. Whatever unfolds, it is clear that Venezuela's political future is no longer determined solely within its borders. The intervention has placed the country at the center of a geopolitical showdown involving regional actors, global powers, and energy markets. Trump's warning to Delcy Rodríguez marks a significant moment in U.S. foreign policy, signaling a willingness to exert military force not only for strategic or defense purposes, but to actively reshape another country's political trajectory. This shift has implications beyond Venezuela. It tests international norms around sovereignty and intervention. It challenges existing alliances and regional frameworks in the Western Hemisphere. It signals a more assertive, unilateral approach to foreign policy, one that may increase tensions with Russia, China, and other global actors. Whether the Trump administration will follow through with further threats or military actions remains uncertain. His mention of future interventions, including in places as unexpected as Greenland, suggests an expansive view of American strategic interests that could extend far beyond Venezuela. Reuters. Donald Trump's warning to Venezuela's new interim leader encapsulates a moment of high geopolitical tension. At its heart are questions about power, legitimacy, sovereignty, and the rule of international law. If Delcy Rodríguez fails to cooperate with Washington's demands, Trump has made clear she could face consequences even more severe than Maduro's. This stark ultimatum underscores not only the crisis in Venezuela, but the evolving nature of American foreign policy and its reverberations around the world. As the global community watches, the situation in Venezuela may well serve as a defining moment in the 21st century balance of power, one that tests international norms, regional alliances, and the essence of state sovereignty itself.